Shaq's house. Shaq's house. You're now in Shaq's house.
What's up, Shaq Houses? How you doing? The one and only, your boy Shaq House right here. Anyway, yes, I am Xavier Institute alumni, as are some of you. I know it. Don't be afraid to shout out your alumni colors. That's right. And as such, we're going to be talking about another ex-villain today, a very little known ex-villain, in fact. I probably should have dropped this during the earlier part of the pandemic because that's exactly who we're talking about. Pandemic. Yeah, some of you never heard of this villain before. He only appeared in 4 or 5 issues or whatever, but he's a retcon character. He's a pretty cool power. They should utilize him a whole lot more. Check it out. Pandemic was originally a scientist, a geneticist by the name of Dr. Richard Palance. A colleague of Professor Charles Xavier's, he consulted Dr. Palance around the time that Rogue first joined the X-Men. You see, Xavier, he sought Dr. Palance's assistance regarding Rogue's uncontrollable mutant power at the time. But excited by the potential that he saw in Rogue's power, Dr. Palance sampled her blood, spliced it with a viral agent, and then infected himself with it, hoping to gain her power for himself. But instead, he gained the power to copy mutant abilities. Dr. Palance then established the John Fordyce Hospital Clinic as a front to lure more mutants to him, and as a result, he amassed 300 mutant powers. Eventually, Dr. Palance believed that the ultimate potential in Rogue's ability was a way to attain immortality by living other people's lives, and thus, he created a new virus to allow the absorption of the entirety of another person's mind with a single touch. Wanting to test the virus to ensure its safety, Dr. Palance, now calling himself Pandemic, sought Rogue as a test subject. When the X-Men investigated the Fordyce Clinic after detecting mutant signatures emanating from it, they encountered Pandemic's bodyguards and his plague dogs, monstrous, shape-shifting humans he had mutated far beyond their original genetic template. The plague dogs captured Rogue and took her to Pandemic's base in India, but they were pursued by Rogue's X-Men teammates. During the ensuing battle, Pandemic copied Sabretooth's abilities, not knowing that he possessed a mutant healing factor, which nullified the virus within him, rendering Pandemic powerless. A vengeful Lady Mastermind, still angry that Pandemic experimented on her, temporarily trapped Pandemic's mind within an illusionary maze. Recovering later on, Pandemic was among the scientists contacted by the X-Man known as the Beast in his quest to reverse the Scarlet Witch's No More Mutants mandate, the mutant gene suppression that prevented new mutant births, but Pandemic refused to help them, citing that they destroyed his gene bank, so he does not wish them well. But what are his powers? Okay, Pandemic, he obtained a DNA sample from Rogue and synthesized her power into a virus called Strain 87 and then injected himself with it. This gave him the ability to copy and permanently retain the powers of any mutant he came into contact with. And unlike Rogue, he was not absorbing, only copying. And even then, he was just copying powers. And moreover, he wasn't copying special skills, memories, or personality traits. Additionally, he did not require skin-to-skin contact for his power to operate. He could activate it by making contact with something as small as a tissue or a DNA sample. Although he claimed that he had 300 superhuman mutant powers, including 17 different forms of invulnerability, the powers that he did demonstrate on panel were readily identifiable as those of, and mind you, this is the order in which they appeared, as those of Nightcrawler, Lady Mastermind, Chamber, Cyclops, Havok, Storm, Bishop, Iceman, Husk, Alchemy, Sunfire, the Marvel Girl, Shadowcat, Cannonball, and finally Sabretooth. Dr. Richard Palance, he holds a PhD in genetics and is a recognized geneticist. He also holds an MD and specializes in infectious diseases. Some fun facts. He was a retcon character who was added into Rogue's backstory, though we've never actually seen the story on panel. A colleague of Xavier's from back when Rogue first joined the team, Xavier consulted Dr. Palance when he was looking for ways to help Rogue control her absorption power. He had a DNA library on hundreds of mutants, which he created after being exposed to several mutants and X-Men as an outside physician. Of course, he's still pissy about the X-Men destroying said library, but how he returned to his superhuman form, as shown here, has yet to be explained. The X-Men beat him by having him take Sabretooth's powers, with Pandemic not knowing that Creed had a mutant healing factor. It eradicated Strain 87 and Pandemic's entire power set, making him human once again. It's like no wonder he had several invulnerability powers and none involving a fast healing factor, because as a doctor who specializes in infectious diseases, he knew what would happen if he had a healing ability. Clever, but also pathetic. Yet he had several mutant powers and is basically a power-hungry geneticist who has quite a way with people. He wouldn't be welcome on Krakoa, however, but if he was, it'd be an all-you-can-eat buffet for him. But imagine if he was around Hope Summers, Sync, or the Mimic. He wouldn't even need to touch any more mutants then or make any contact with their DNA. Now, I wouldn't say that he's a wannabe mutant, but in many ways, he's what the new X-Men villain John Sublime and his U-Men were seeking after. If you recall, during Grant Morrison's run on New X-Men, Dr. John Sublime, who was actually a host to a malevolent sentient bacteria of the same surname, used a fortune from his successful pharmaceutical company to create the trans-species movement. Disguised as New Age pop psychology, the trans-species movement advocated the idea that mutant kind was the next step in human evolution, but normal humans need not be left behind. And although John Sublime openly denounced extremist followers, he secretly used the trans-species movement to promote the kidnapping of mutants and harvesting of their organs and genes for genetic transplants to humans who wanted to become mutants. Now the U-Men, they're the militant branch of the trans-species movement, which also serves as the public face of both them and John Sublime. The U-Men have encased themselves in environmental armor suits, symbolically they think, but in reality, it's more like fucked up performance art, and claiming that they will not return to the regular world and breathe the regular world's air until their desire to become mutants is fulfilled. So to that end, the U-Men engage in extreme measures to achieve their dream, including black market organ harvesting and tissue grafts from captured mutants. Dr. Sublime even penned a best-selling book entitled The Third Species, outlining the U-Men's philosophy. You see, all these idiots had to do was see Pandemic, and he would have given them the same treatment that he had. There was no need for these cultist idiots in these bulk armors and having mutant organ farms and surgically graft their parts onto themselves. There was no need for none of that. Pandemic had 300 mutant powers just by having a virus in his blood. Idiots. Anyway, his copy powers and the physical mutations that came with them have made him look like an amalgam hodgepodge in his superpowered form. And his face, half his face anyway, looks like Iceman's. He's larger, muscular, and for some reason wears a winter parka all the time. Also, his end goal was really stupid. He wanted immortality through Rogue's power. It's like, dude, watch this right here. You touched Cannonball and copied his full mutation, a blast field, and he's an external, an immortal mutant. But no, you had to be done with your collector's mindset. You have at least 3 Omega level mutants as part of your power set too. Didn't you consider that? Also, we never got to see the other 284 abilities that he had. He only displayed 16 on panel. What he should have done was found a mutant who knew how to read DNA and determine what a mutant's powers were from there. That way, he wouldn't have been so damn greedy and would have taken into account which abilities that he should take. But I will say this, it's also cool how quickly he masters the powers that he copies. Like he mastered Cannonball's ability right here very quickly. He's sort of like Sylar from Heroes. Okay, Shackhousers, that's what I got for you today. Happy Memorial Day weekend. Have plenty of fun. Go to plenty of cookouts. Freeload them if you got to. I'll be back at you next week with something special. See you then. Later.
Mansion, apartment.
Shack, house. Yes!
Yeah.